This week on the Deep Leadership Podcast.
What I tell a lot of these executives is letting go is the key to grow. I understand that what got you here is being deep in the weeds, controlling everything, but that's not what's going to help you scale your company to the next level. You really have to, sort of pass on your checkers board to others to have time to plan your chess moves, right?
This episode is brought to you by the Salty Sailor Coffee Company, the official coffee of the Deep Leadership Podcast. Salty Sailor is a veteran-owned coffee brand on a mission to deliver premium, fresh roasted coffee while making a positive impact in the world. Their motto is drink coffee and do good, which reflects their commitment to making amazing coffee and actively supporting the military community. 10% of every order goes to the Navy Marine Corps Relief Society, an organization dedicated to helping sailors, Marines, and their families in times of need. All our listeners get 10% off every order of their amazing coffee by using the discount code DEEP at checkout. So check them out at saltysailorcoffee.com. Welcome to the Deep Leadership Podcast. Today I'm joined by Ryan Renteria. Ryan is a CEO coach at Stretch 5. He is a diverse board director and speaker who helps leaders optimize professional and personal growth. He is a former Goldman Sachs executive with experience in the business side of professional sports. Ryan has been featured in the Harvard Business Review, Fast Company, and CEO World. He is the author of the book, Lead Without Burnout, Growth with Less Stress for You and Your Team, which is a #1 best-selling new release in the area of work-life balance. And I'm excited to have him on the show to talk about how we can lead without burnout. So Ryan, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, John, for having me. I'm really thrilled to chat and to try to be as helpful to your audience as I can.
Well, and I know you will because it's an important issue for leaders. We have a lot of entrepreneurs who listen to the show, and burnout is a problem. So let's talk about burnout in general. So why do you think so many leaders, so many entrepreneurs end up burning out?
Yeah, I think it comes down to that most leaders are perfectionists. They've gotten there by being deep in the weeds and handling every single detail. And they're trying to be a 10 out of 10 in every single area of life, which is just impossible. And so when faced with these tough time allocation decisions, they'll end up cutting back on the personal side rather than the professional side, oftentimes due to guilt. Maybe they're concerned that their team is going to think they're not working as hard as everyone else, or they worry about slipping versus the competition. And so then ultimately the personal side suffers, whether it's more stress or poor sleep or not a lot of exercise. And then you might start to have some outbursts at home with loved ones or a lack of presence, and eventually burnout ensues. And so I've seen this movie many times before.
Yeah, it seems like a real problem, and I definitely see it with on the entrepreneurial side. You have an idea, you start your business. In the beginning, you're doing everything yourself, and then maybe
Right.
you hire a few more people, but you don't let go of certain things, and then next thing you know, you're trying to juggle way too many things, and then there's high levels of stress in being an entrepreneur.
Mhm.
There's ups and downs, and so yeah, I think it can quickly lead to situations where people, unhealthy, situations with people. So mental health issues, stress, like you said, family issues is a big issue for entrepreneurs and for business leaders. So let's talk about work-life balance. So is there really such a thing as work-life balance? And if so, how can we as leaders find that balance? How can we build like
Sure.
stronger mental and physical health, more time with friends and family without sacrificing the things that we're trying to do with our companies?
Right. Yeah, I think there absolutely is such a thing as work-life balance. And the key to that, achieving that and avoiding burnout, is really around creating this culture of well-being that's going to attract A players in terms of
Mm.
talented employees. And that's really what the book is all about, is how do we create that culture and slash the stress that's harming our relationships and health. And yeah, I just the culture is such an important aspect of it. I mean, I think the statistics show that it's 80% of employees would quit a job over mental health. And so if you don't improve your culture around mental health, you're taking a risk that 8 out of 10 employees could leave for a competitor and add to your workload until you find a replacement. And then that's very expensive turnover and rinse and repeat along those lines. So I think the culture and being really able to attract that A talent is critical to achieving the work-life balance that everyone wants.
Yeah. So how do we, it's interesting. You say, build a culture of well-being. I really like that a lot. And, if I look at my company, we have a list of I have a list of expectations I give to every new employee. And in there, it says, take your vacation, spend time with family.
Mhm,
It
mhm.
says, have fun.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, that's at the bottom of the list. I mean, there are other things like, like treat everyone with respect, do what you say you're going to do. But these are part of
Sure.
my expectations.
Mhm.
And so I say that, right, that I want people to take their vacation. I want them to spend time with family. And I do try to look for that. But how else can we create a culture of well-being? Because I
Right.
think I've worked at companies where there was not a culture of well-being. It was that
Mhm.
culture of you better perform or you're out the door. And so there was a high level of stress to perform at a high level. And there was
Right.
no feeling about like there was no acknowledgement that we were people and we had issues outside of work. So
Sure. Well, and I think having those in your document are definitely important and helpful. Um, and what's also true, ironically, is that in my view and what I've seen with the work that I've done is it's really the most important is having that culture of trust, candor, psychological safety. We talk a lot about that in the book. And we as humans, we want to feel heard, recognized, and validated. And so a huge part of that culture of well-being is being able to hear, recognize, and validate the views of your teammates.
hmm.
And as well as being able to not just say, hey, great work, thanks, a very general type of thing, but to be able to surprise them with specific compliments, with gratitude. Anytime the boss is walking by the office, normally the employee starts, their heart starts pounding. Is he going to come in here and yell at me, throw more work my way? And what a surprise if you walk in and say, hey, I just want to let you know, not some general thank you, but XYZ project, you did ABC thing, and that really helped us take things to the next level. And that's one of the many reasons why you're so valuable at this company. I just want to tell you, I'm really grateful for that. Those are the kind of things that really drive tremendous loyalty and feeling of well-being in a culture. I think also empathizing with them when they make mistakes and really figuring out, did they screw up somewhere in their process? And this is a great learning opportunity, and I'm going to help them get there and empathize with them that when I was in their shoes, I screwed up that way as well.
Hmm.
Or did we just have a really unlucky, unfavorable outcome? And it's, as Ted Lasso says, make like a goldfish and forget. We try to move on and get back to a positive mental space as fast as possible in those scenarios. And I think lastly, truly caring about them as human beings. And
Hmm.
it's pretty obvious to your teammates when they have a boss that really is about extracting maximum productivity and whatever else happens, happens, and bosses that truly care about them as human beings. And so I think those are some of the softer ways to drive that tremendous culture of trust, psychological safety, candor, and ultimately well-being that attracts the top players in the talent market through that word of mouth.
Hmm. Yeah, what's interesting, you're saying all this, and what comes to mind quickly is that if you do these things right, and you prevent burnout of your key players, right? So you create this culture of well-being. You treat people as humans. You treat them. You care. You have empathy. Seems like you would attract great people and retain great people and
Yes.
perform at a high level. So
Yes.
it seems like this is a message that all leaders need to hear, but sometimes, how do I say this? It doesn't exist in a lot of companies. Like again, I think before we press record, I worked for 3 global companies for 22 years, and I can say, um, yeah, no, it was not a culture of well-being. It was a culture of
Mhm.
high performance and
Mhm.
very much unforgiving culture with respect to mistakes or anything else. High level of performance expected at all times, and very much not caring about the individual at all. So
Right.
it seems like they're not hearing the message. So a lot of companies aren't hearing this message.
Right. And it starts at the top because we often learn from people above us, whether that's our parents, and we carry on a lot of their characteristics when we parent our own kids,
Hmm.
or our bosses. And so if the CEO acts in a command and control, work you to the grind, not care about you as a human being, kind of leader, then you, as the CFO, COO, CMO, are likely to do that with your team. And each of those people underneath you that has a team of people reporting them are likely to do the same. And
Hmm.
it's this negative snowball flywheel effect. Whereas if the opposite happens, and the person at the top is setting the tone for the kind of culture that I'm talking about, then the people underneath them are going to see that modeled and pass that on to their own teammates. And then it's going to create a positive flywheel throughout the organization. And so I think our natural instinct is just to default to what we were taught growing up or what we see as kind of the old school culture. And it's going to take a lot of training, education, and buy-in from CEOs. And ironically, it shouldn't take that much because in the end, you are saving a ton of money because of a
Hmm.
lot less turnover. And you're ultimately driving better performance in those fewer hours worked because people are much more rested and focused and motivated and dedicated and loyal. And so it really shouldn't take that much convincing, but reversing many years of muscle memory isn't the easiest thing in the world. So,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's interesting because I had a previous guest on. We were talking about, how do you create a culture in a big company? How, we were talking about culture, and how do you
mhm,
create this, a great culture in a large company where you have all these different, diverse organization all over the
mhm,
globe. And he brought up the example of Chick-fil-A, and they say they want to be a caring company, and you
mhm.
see that in the local stores and what have you. Is they've done a good job rolling that out, throughout all their operations. But what he pointed out was the financial performance of Chick-fil-A compared to their competition. Having a
Mhm.
caring culture, actually, they're phenomenal. They're so much so high. They perform so much better than their competition,
That's right.
and because of the culture. So,
Mhm.
to me, uh, it seems like if you want to find an example out there of a company that's doing it, they're one of many, but they're a good example of a company that says we're going to care about our employees, and then it leads to tremendous financial results.
Well, and another one I'd call out that I referenced in the book that everyone, no matter where they live, could probably identify with is Costco because they're all over
Mm,
the country.
yeah,
Costco is one of the best in the world at taking care of its employees in terms of how they're treated, percentage of healthcare that they cover. There's very low turnover amongst the staff. They are generally very happy people, and that leads to happy customers, which ultimately drives significant bottom line profit dollar growth. So there's quite a lot of examples out there
yeah.
of it really working.
Yeah, so it's out there, people. Just you want the results. Here's how you do it. Here's how
That's
you get
right.
it. So I love it. So let's talk about A players. We talked a little bit about that too before we press record as well.
Mhm.
Who are these A players, and why are they so important to really, radically improving a leader's life?
Sure. Well, A players obviously differ by the type of industry, but generally they have some similar characteristics, a tremendous inner drive and self motivation and curiosity for learning, for improving, for growing. They're highly organized with great attention to detail and very reliable that if you tell them something, they're going to take notes, they're going to run off and execute, and you don't have to keep following up with them. And why they're so critical to improving your life. I mean, it really comes down to your ability as a leader to have the A players that then you can trust with higher level responsibilities. And by the way, they're thrilled to take those higher level responsibilities off of your plate because they're getting more purpose and meaning and impact from that from that higher level work and feeling they're contributing to something bigger than themselves. And that's going to free up more time for you for two things. Number one, regular deep strategic thinking sessions and research sessions about the large scale growth potential of your organization. That could be anything from M&A, markets, innovation, whatever is necessary to scale. You're going to have more time to think about those kind of things and research those kind of things when you have trusted employees executing more of the details. And number two, you'll have more time for the parts of your personal life. They're going to refresh your mental health, your creative energy, whether that's sleep, exercise, family time. And the two of those are both extremely critical for your business's growth.
I love this because, one of the biggest criticisms I have about corporate culture is that we search out to hire the best and brightest, right? And a lot of young people coming out of university or just getting a certification or whatever, and they come to these big global companies thinking they're going to change the world, and we give them grunt work for a year before they're allowed to do any heavy lifting. And so they have all
Right.
this education, all this enthusiasm, and we really don't give them the opportunity to have the ball, right? That you sit
That's
there
right.
sitting on the bench for years before they get the ball. And I think what you're saying is that A players want the ball. They want the
Yep.
ball, when times are critical. They want those experiences. So they're saying to the leader, give me the ball. Give me a chance to,
Mm-hmm.
to run a project. Give me a chance to take responsibility when you go away. Give me because they want to develop that experience.
That's
And
right.
and so if we hold back and we don't give it to them, we hold all this stuff close to the vest, they never develop. And they also leave the company because they're not growing.
Correct.
And
That's
so
correct.
they want the ball because they want to grow and develop and further their career as well, right?
That's right. When you look at the true motivations of people in the workplace, everyone thinks it's compensation, but it really comes down to autonomy and responsibility and ownership and not being micromanaged. And so what I tell a lot of these executives is letting go is the key to grow. I understand that what got you here is being deep in the weeds, controlling everything, but that's not what's going to help you scale your company to the next level. You really have to, sort of pass on your checkers board to others to have time to plan your chess moves, right? And so I think this is one of the single most important messages and one of the things that people struggle with the most because that's what got them there. And if you don't do that, then these individuals are going to be demotivated and ultimately leave you.
Yeah, yeah. It's one of the things I often talk about is that we need to give our employees the gift of a challenge. And it sounds funny, but for me in my career, I wanted the ball. And so when I've had leaders give me the gift of a challenge, something that was outside my comfort zone that allowed me to grow, I
Mm-hmm.
loved it. I thrived in that
Mm-hmm.
environment. I wanted that those difficult jobs, those
That's right.
turnaround situations. That's what I thrived in. So if you think to yourself as a leader, well, I don't want to give that to Jim or Susan because it's difficult. I'll handle that myself, and I'll give them the easy assignments. No, they want the difficult stuff. I wanted the difficult assignments, right? And so
Right.
they want to grow. And again, I love this phrase, letting go is the key to grow. I think that's a
Mm-hmm.
really important thing for leaders in big businesses, but also entrepreneurs as well. Too many
Mm-hmm.
entrepreneurs never grow because they're holding everything so tight to the vest. They
That's right.
they started this business because they're a really good software developer, right? And they want to hold on to software development, and they're forgetting about marketing and sales
Mm-hmm.
and the strategic moves that have to take place. So if
That's
we're
right.
not, they're working in the business and not working on the business, and that's a
Right.
big problem for entrepreneurs.
Big
I see
problem.
I see that I see that all the time.
That's right.
um so A players, they're key, right? They're going to help us free up our time to be able to do the strategic thinking, to have that, family time, to really have a work-life balance. How do we find these people? How do we hire them? How do we find them within the organization and promote them and develop them? So what are some best practices for that?
Sure. Well, I always like to ask what Apple, Microsoft, and Google have in common, and the answer is all their former CEOs said the number one key to success was hiring great people.
Mm,
And how many times do you see a college athletic director fire a coach, and then they fly out the next day to have dinner with one guy, and then they offer him the job, and
mm,
it's no shock they end up losing a bunch of games under that new coach, and it's really because they did not do the type of full due diligence process that an Apple, a Microsoft, a Google would do, putting a dozen coaching candidates through several interviews with everyone in the top brass, doing vast reference checks and things of that nature. And so I wrote, it's beyond the scope of a short podcast interview, but I wrote articles for Harvard Business Review, Fast Company, and there's links on my website, thestretch5.com. But really, the short version is it comes down to number one, job descriptions that differentiate you and excite the reader that this is a place that fits my specific desires culturally. Number two, the interview process, very unique questions, sample assignments, how you approach rating candidates. I mean, so much of this insufficient hiring diligence comes from this fear of missing out, and you fall in love with someone's personality, or you do shallow reference checks. And that's really the third part, is deeper reference checks, putting them at ease. So you get uncanned responses. And so I think it's just that there are so many fine points, and we talked a lot about them in the book and in some of these articles that are important to this unique hiring process that's going to help you get more A players. And diligence is detailed, deep due diligence over a lengthy period of time is really the overarching theme that it comes down to.
I love that. I love that. I know I coach several CEOs and COOs and myself, and that's one of the subjects I talk about. Is I talk about hire tough, and that
Mm-hmm.
makes your life easy. So
That's
if you're
right. Yep.
if you're tough in your hiring process, it makes your life easy. And it's similar to what you're saying, is like, if you really have that diligence in place and you really identify these A players, it's going to make your
Mm-hmm.
life easier.
That's
Right.
right.
And so yeah, you have to find them. And again, I think I found him within my organization too. So you come like in my business life, when I was in corporate, they would throw me into, airdrop me into a business that needed to be turned around. And so I wasn't necessarily doing all the hiring. So I was like,
Right.
okay, I've got a bunch of people here now. Now what do and I have a bunch of problems. And
Mm-hmm.
so I often would spend time looking for those A players within the organization, and
Sure.
maybe people that had potential that weren't, that weren't being fully utilized yet, or,
Right.
and so part of part of it could be to identify, A players within the organization already versus
Mm-hmm.
even hiring. So, and I
Who
found those
have
people.
that core skill set and can thrive when they're put in a different role.
Yeah, exactly. So I always say I'm looking for the employees with their lights on. And I love how you talk about
Mm-hmm.
curiosity and they want to learn, they want to grow. I always say it's like they have their lights on. I can see it. Like you can see
Right.
the enthusiasm and and they're asking the right questions and they're diving into things and volunteering for things like, okay, this person, is an A player.
You think about the pads that you hit on the football field. Those are the kind of people that are going to run through those pads and keep pushing until they get the answers for you. Right.
Yeah, yeah. It's an interesting part of my, interview process. One of the things I'm always looking for is grit. Some examples of in your life, have you overcome adversity and
Mm-hmm.
persevered through tough times? I want to hear those
Right.
stories. And I do end up hiring a lot of veterans, only because a lot of them have gone through some really tough situations, and
Right.
they've accomplished missions, it admits, a lot of diverse or adversity hitting them.
Mm-hmm.
And so I find those to be, like, as an entrepreneur in a small business, I find those people are just phenomenal employees because they've been through so much, and they're
That's
and
right.
they're willing, they're willing to, like I said, run through those paths to get
That's
things
right.
done. And so I love to find those players. So
Yeah.
for sure. Um, so one of the things that is interesting. So leaders have problem with burnout, obviously. What other employees or where, who else are experiencing these mental health challenges within the workplace, and then how do we as leaders address
So I'll ask you a question. What
it?
do Kevin Love, Emma Stone, Miley Cyrus, and Michael Phelps have in common?
Very successful in their individual careers.
Correct. That's one of many facets. They're all wealthy, good looking, in great
Oh,
shape, world class at their jobs, and have
yes.
all spoken out about mental health struggles.
Yeah.
And I give that example so that CEOs understand that even top performers could be struggling with mental health issues. It wouldn't appear evident, but that's the case. I mean, CEOs themselves, I think it's the statistics show it's 1 in 2 struggle with some sort of mental health issue. And this is not severe institutionalized, but having some level of anxiety, depression, things of that nature. And that's 4 times the average American in this country. And a lot of executives are lonely without trusted sounding boards because their significant other, the therapist, might not have the business experience to understand what they're going through. And they don't want to look weak in front of their team and their investors or their board. And things of that nature. And so I think that don't think, oh, it's only the people that are underperforming that are going through mental health struggles. It could be your top performers and they're just holding it in. And so how do we recognize that? Right. And I think it comes down to a few things. Number one, which of your teammates appear to be losing focus, caring less about their jobs? Is their work quality down? Is their work productivity down? That's one sign to look for. I think number two is when individuals are sort of talking back in snarkier tones or having shorter fuses. They're not displaying as much enthusiasm or joy in the job. And number three, we all go through, a bad night of sleep and a tough day here or there, but who's been going through extended periods of exhaustion where it's
Mm.
just for weeks they've looked out of sorts. And I think that those are some of the things that you can do to identify and get at it early.
Mm.
Be that person that cares about them as a human, that's there for them. And obviously you have to be careful not to cross too much into their personal lives, but just to be there, someone as a sounding board, or offer them resources that can help them out. So I think those are all just very important points.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. And I think too, the more you know your people, the more you spend time with them, you can see
Mm-hmm.
those behavioral shifts and changes
Mm-hmm.
so that you can have that opportunity to say, everything okay, Bob, everything, everything
Mm-hmm.
okay, Susan,
That's right.
and be able to acknowledge that, or at least accept that. So if you don't know your people, if you're sequestered in your office, you don't really know your people, you're not going to know when they're showing signs of stress, or
Right.
burnout. Yeah, yeah. So
Right.
it's important
Yeah.
to get to know your people so that you can see those things and get a
Mm-hmm.
handle on it early. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely. I love that. Um, One of the things too, I was just thinking, we could, we often, one of the things we can do as leaders is delegate, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if we're stressed out, we got too much, we just delegate all that work down, and then, but then we could create stress and burnout downstream. So
That's right.
how do we ensure that we don't just force it onto others and just get it off our back and force other people? So all our people are stressed and burnt out, but we're happy. That's not what you want
Correct.
either, right?
Correct. Yeah, it's a great point. I think that really comes down to decision making and productivity. Everyone wastes a ton of time putting out fires from bad decisions and on the wrong priorities. And so, investing in education for yourself in elite productivity and decision making tools, and then coaching others on your team in those elite productivity and decision making tools so you free up more time for everyone, is the most crucial aspect of all of this. And I thought it was so important that we have in a book that's only 8 chapters, one chapter is on decision making and one chapter is on productivity, because you want to be able to free up time for everybody and not just shift this burnout downstream, right? And so I think on the productivity front, a lot of it comes down to really embracing the 80-20 rule and figuring out what are the top three things that are going to truly move the needle, i.e., grow our EBITDA and our returns on capital over the next 3 to 5 years, and make those critical priorities, even if other things fall by the wayside. Another thing we talked about in the book is the Eisenhower matrix, being able to allocate your to-do list by what's important and urgent, what's important but not urgent, what's not important but urgent, and not important and not urgent, and dealing with those 4 quadrants in different ways. So I think those are some of the important productivity tools that folks can read more about on there. And then I think from a decision making standpoint, I'm a huge believer in 2 things. Number one is lessons checklists. So going back and thinking about what are the top 10 mistakes that I've made in this role, and what are the lessons that I learned from them, and forcing yourself to go down that top 10 list before you make a major decision in the future, so that you see that you're not repeating any of those mistakes or violating any of those lessons. And then I think pre-mortems are also very important on this front of decision making, where you try to picture in advance, if we go down this path and fail, what are the most likely reasons why we failed? And what can we do along the way if we're headed down that path to thwart that high odds of failure? And what can we do now from an action step perspective to lower the odds that we're going to fail if we go down that path? So I think those are some of the things that folks can get a lot more educated on, and then educate their team on, and effectively eliminate a lot of the time that's wasted from putting out fires from bad decisions and focusing on the wrong priorities.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I mean, simple risk assessment tools are really helpful just in terms of, like I said, decision making, depending on the size of the decision, you can actually, look through what are the potential, what's the probability and what's the impact of, the various things that can go wrong with the decision, right? And just to be able to look at those
Right.
things quickly, and it doesn't take a lot of effort to do it, but to
Hmm.
look through and say, okay, have we considered X, Y, and Z? So you make
Hmm.
good decisions, right? And so you're not dealing with, like you said, the aftermath of it. And it's interesting because one of the things that I found just in my corporate career is that firefighting, when you have an organization that is in perpetual firefighting mode, you just never make any progress. I mean, you're just, and it's hard when I came into a lot of times I come into a company and they're in firefighting mode, and I've got to
Sure.
get them, you've got to sort of put out the fires and steady the ship and start moving in a general direction. But
Hmm.
you're just wasted effort when you're
That's right.
redoing. The re word is, it bothers me more than anything. We're reworking,
Hmm.
we're redoing,
Hmm.
that's just a wasted effort. Do it right the first time. You don't have to do
Right.
it multiple times. So yeah, I
Right.
love that. And I love the 80-20 rule. Like, work on what's important. And yeah, it's all about focus, right? And
Hmm.
that's part of the something I had to learn throughout my career, is that I used to say everything was important as the boss, but it's not. You
It's
can't
not.
say that. It's the worst thing you do to people, say that everything's important. Quality
Then
is
nothing's
easy,
important.
and then nothing's important. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So it's really important that you help set the priorities for your people so they know that they're not spinning their wheels on things that are not important. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, that's good. So you also talk about traditional missions statements and values, that they're kind of ineffective the way we traditionally do it. What are some ideas to make them more effective?
Yeah, I think most sets of values and mission statements are pretty bad. They're
Yeah,
very vague with these fuzzy buzzwords that could apply to any company, and they don't really give you any kind of direction or action steps to take. And so the chapter I think that's gotten the most positive feedback from the book is chapter 2, where I detail sort of this proprietary process I've developed over the years that are detailed cultural bylaws. And it really is about giving employees more clear and concrete priorities and better tools for making sound decisions and taking action. And they also inspire shared meaning. And so it helps you attract talent better when you're able to share these types of things when you're interviewing folks. And it's really a way of expanding upon values and mission statements in a much more detailed fashion to understand the the why. Why are we getting up every single day
mm,
and doing this? The what exactly are we trying to do here? And the how. What are our strengths, our philosophies? What's our identity? What are we hanging our hat on? And I think being able to lay out those three things, as well as tagging on the lessons checklist, is very important because it allows the employees not to have to go to their boss with every single major decision. Because here you have this document, you might rank your constituents in that document, which effectively Costco has done something similar to that. And so it makes it easier for you to understand, why are we doing what we're doing, what it is, what we're doing, how we're doing it, who am I putting first on the food chain, and it really just helps make decentralized decision making flow a lot faster and a lot smoother.
yeah, I like that because it does help. It does help. One of the things you end up happening with, especially with large organizations, that you have a number of different people all trying to achieve the goal, but there's a lot of different ways to get there, right? And so,
Hmm.
like, what you're saying is, if you have a really good mission statement and values that explains how we do things, this is the how, then there's less argument and debate about the right way of
Right,
accomplishing the task. So because
right.
I've been in companies with very vague mission statements and values, and so we all would argue about the best way to achieve the objective, right? And so we were all trying to achieve the objective, but we were all arguing about the best way to do it.
Hmm.
Whereas if those are clear, like, we're going to take care of the customer first. So, all right. So that, what does that mean? Well, on-time delivery is critical, right? Well, that does that mean? Well, it means that inventory maybe have to be a little bit higher in this case to be able to keep that
Hmm.
down. So we may
Hmm.
have to sacrifice the financial performance on cash flow to keep a little more
Hmm.
inventory, because it's
Right.
more important that we take care of the customer on-time delivery. And so, like, it's so there's trade-offs there, and so
That's
they
right.
come apparent within that value statement. It sounds like.
That's right. Well, it's similar to Costco saying, well, our merchants can only take there's a certain cap on gross margin rate. And so we're passing on more of our savings from our buying power onto our customers, which leads to more retention, which ultimately leads to higher revenue and net profit dollars over time. Right. And so
Yeah.
it lays that out in a much more logical fashion for folks to understand.
Well, and two, if you're a supplier to Costco, you know the rules, right? You know the way it's going to be. So you go into it eyes wide open, like, okay, well, we're going to have to keep our margins a certain level, right, to be a Costco supplier. But you also know that they'll, if you follow those rules, they'll be loyal to you, type of
Right.
thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So everybody knows the rules of the game versus you never know what the rules are, and it's frustrating, and people and your vendors walk away because they're like, I can't work with this company.
Right.
Yeah. So it makes a lot of sense. It really does.
Mhm.
Um, this has been fantastic. What final message would you like to leave with our listeners at this point?
Sure. I would say if you pick up the book, I've adapted a wheel of life exercise in there, which I think is really important to help you figure out what matters most to you.
Mm.
And once you do that, really work on improving the mental health friendliness of your culture. Get comfortable with trusting and delegating higher level responsibilities to the A players that you're going to attract, and use that freed up time wisely for some combination of strategic thinking about your business and work life balance. And you can't be a 10 out of 10 out of everything, but if you're an 8 or 9 out of 10 in the 3 to 5 areas that matter most to you, then you're really a 10 out of 10 as a whole human. And so that's really the final message I'd love to deliver.
I love that. I love that. So this is a fantastic message Ryan is giving you, leaders listening. You can have a work-life balance. You can have a life outside of work. You can achieve massively awesome results and still have a life if you follow the advice that's in this book. It's called Lead Without Burnout. I highly recommend it. If you are even struggling yourself right now, you're listening to this, you say, I feel like I'm on the edge of burnout, or I am burning out. You know what? Take some time, read this book, get this book, or reach out to Ryan, and he's going to give you some guidance along the way of how the best way to get away from that. And again, look at your A players. They want the ball. Stop trying to carry the ball everywhere. You can't do everything, leaders. Give your A players the ball. It's going to be good for them. It's going to be good for you. And I love that piece of advice. That's really, really powerful. So, Ryan, how can our listeners find out more about you, your company, and this new book?
Sure. You can get the book on most online booksellers such as Amazon or others. It's called Lead Without Burnout. All the proceeds from the book I'm donating to mental health charities like Mindshare Partners. And to learn more about me in terms of coaching, speaking, etc., my website is thestretch5.com. Thestretch5.com.
Fantastic. We're going to put links in the show notes for all of Ryan's resources. And again, if this is something that you're interested in, if you maybe you want to challenge Ryan, but challenge me, say that you can't do it, you can't have work-life balance. I would say you can. I just came back from a 2.5 week vacation in Europe, and I'm an entrepreneur, and I run a high performing company. You can do it. I have A players. That's how I do it. So it can be done. If you're wondering about how to do it, get this book, reach out to Ryan. And again, this is really important information. We've had past guests that talk about their burnout stories and how they've reached the end of their ropes and what effects they had on their life and their health. We don't want that to happen to you. So again, don't burn out. Get this book and get a handle on it. Again, great, Ryan, you're giving the money to mental health charities. That's fantastic. I didn't even know that, but that's also very, very powerful. So thank you, Ryan, come on the show, and thanks for sharing what you're doing. This is really, really important stuff.
You bet. I had a blast. Thanks, John.
Thank you. Well, that's it for today. Thank you for listening to Deep Leadership. If you like this podcast, please subscribe and share so we can continue to build a world with better bosses. Until next time, this is John Rennie saying take care and lead well.